All right, so we have been having a real hard time finding somebody to make plans for this thing so we could give them out to you guys. But instead of doing all that, we're just going to show you how we got this whole thing made. And whenever you're making something like this, thicker steel, it's going to be stronger, it's going to be better. Okay, these tubes on the outside of this thing, we did this just because it looks cool. All right, thought it looked really cool for my buddy, wanted to give some really cool looking thing, and we just welded steel tubes onto the end of this thing, and it's going to take this heat up and blow out some hot air for you too. And then on the inside of this guy, regular door, slide that through, bing, bang, boom, done. Okay. And then on the inside, this is one important thing. There's a piece of steel right here that goes along the top of this when you get your wood in there. That's because the heat and all the hot air is going to move around into the end of the exhaust. And the important thing about that is the more the heat moves, the hotter things are going to get. Okay. And then we come back here. We got these dual fans going on back here, okay? You don't need these ridiculous fans back here to get this fire going. This is only because I'm crazy and I want to make everything over the top insane. And then the next thing over here, this is the oil burner, okay? The oil burner is really simple. It's a metal tube connected to a little water fitting over here that you use on your spigot, and all it does is drip oil into this thing once the fire gets going and once the fire gets hot. And then you got super mega heat, okay? And here's a couple important things to point out to you guys if you are going to make one of these, all right? They're really simple. Make it airtight so you don't leak out carbon monoxide into the air and kill somebody, okay? Your exhaust has to be larger than your intake. That's really important. And having controls on both of them. Okay, they're not that complicated. Throw fire in, take fire out. If you want to have your own separate ash pan on the bottom of that thing, that's cool. But you don't need it. Just use a shovel on the inside. Don't overcomplicate something so simple. And that's the biggest thing. Everybody's asking me all these questions. How do we do this? How do we do that? How do we do this? Make a steel box, put some metal on it, okay? Have yourself a nice sealed door. You could get some fire rope, all right? And you can make it really simple. It doesn't need to be this complicated.
So how did you start by making this? Did you make the box first?
So the first thing we did was this. First we tacked the whole box together. We made this big house-shaped looking thing, okay? Then what we did, we cut out all of our shapes for, the door, the intake, and the outtake. And then once we had all that done, that gave us our angles to figure out all this stuff. And then we made a couple of these things, and then we just tacked it all together, and then we did our final welds.
So in the bottom of these are open. So that's what's taking the cold air in, going through, and then out the top. Okay, next question is, what did you put in the bottom of this that's not just steel?
Okay, ready? Let me sure. All right, the next thing we did over here, this stuff on the bottom of this to protect the metal from getting all cooked out, that's called fire brick, all right? And you could use sand, or you could go to the store, get yourself some fire brick, and all that's doing is stopping the hot embers from resting on the metal and burning itself through and cooking out all your carbon over time.
Okay. Where did you get this piece of plexiglass from?
Oh, okay, that is a welding hood clear that I got. So it's a special glass that you put on welding hoods, and you can get the 4x4s or the 2x4s, and that's what that is.
And where did you get those fans from that go in the back of the unit?
Go on Amazon, okay? Type in high heat fans on Amazon, and you're going to have a long list of these things. And the cool thing about these things have high-low. So these are actually made for a wood-burning stove. And another big thing that people kept telling us, oh, you're going to burn out your fans, they're going to get melted and everything like that. No, it doesn't work that way, okay? Because what you got going on, hot air, is coming in from the back, keeping your fans cool, supplying cool air to your fire. So no matter how hot it gets, this whole thing gets, these fans don't get that hot.
Yeah, those are the original fans that came with it. I'm on my second year, and I've burned probably 3 full face cords through it, and they still work.
Yeah. So like I said, the only thing that I would probably say is when you mount your fans and everything, have your rubber electrical stuff far away. But the fans are made for the heat. They're not going to burn out because it doesn't work that way. You got all your cold air sucking through, keeping all this stuff cold.
And although this is closed, how'd you make that damper.
So the damper's really cool. Okay, all I did was trace out my inside diameter, cut it out on a piece of circle, welded one spot through this side and one spot through that side, and all this in this spring is just keeps a little bit of tension on, so it holds it in the shape that I want. So really, really bare bones simple.
And the handle here is just a snap-on wrench.
Yeah, it's a snap-on wrench. People hate me for that one, but it's from my boy Rico. So everybody wants to talk about, hey, the handle's going to get so hot, it's metal and everything like that. Air constantly cools down steel, okay? So yeah, you could have a metal handle on something, but you just got to have this thing sticking a little bit further away. If it's far away from something, it's never going to really get that hot, and that's how metal works. The air cools down everything. So as long as you got this handle sticking out a couple inches, you can throw on a metal handle and you're going to be absolutely fine.
Yeah, this gets hot. If I have this box all the way maxed out and the fuel and everything going, it gets hot, but I can still grab it. It doesn't burn my skin. It gets hot, yes, but not to the point where it burns my skin or I need gloves to open or close the door. And let's just get a look at how you built that door.
Okay, so this whole door, all right, I got this thing on a chain. I like doing this because I just think it looks cool. All that chain does is stop this thing from coming out all the way, okay? And then the door, we cut out the plate with the cutoff wheel, got our door, then we did all this little cool stuff. But then what I like to do, I make all my own hinges at the shop, okay? And the cool thing about the hinges, whenever you make them, it's always smart, whenever you're doing something like this, to have your hinges removable. And all it is a tube inside another tube, and then you can work on it, you can fit up your piece, and then when you're done, you get it right here, you set it right on top.
Okay, so then a lot of questions about that oil drip system.
Okay, oil drip, super simple, all right? You turn this nozzle a little bit, once the fire's going, once it's getting kind of hot, oil comes down through a little tube, and we got a little hot plate in there. Okay, what that hot plate's for is once that hot plate gets hot, and once you get that thing cooking, the oil's going to drip onto that, and then it's going to ignite. Okay, because what's going on, if the little oil drips onto that thing, it gets hot, it brings the smoke, it turns it into a vapor, and it turns it into fire. That will not work until that plate's hot enough to work. And again, it's real simple. Go to the store, figure out your threads and everything like that. And this is just regular black pipe. You turn it on, you let the thing drip, and then you're cooking. And then it just runs to the back.
Last thing, he did this when he first built the stove. He made a video going crazy. He filled it up with a bunch of wood, and he was using a blower. But this was just a barbecue thermostat. It worked until he made that crazy video with it.
Yeah, I destroyed the thermostat on that one. That was my fault. All right, and there's an important thing too. Whenever, the way I did this for a reason, okay? When people tell me all the time, you should have put the metal tubes on the inside, blah, 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 okay? You put the metal tubes on the inside, it's going to cook out all of the carbon in your metal tubes. And what happens is when you cook out all your carbon, it gets real brittle. And this is what it turns into. You lose all your strength, okay? And then if you cook out all the carbon out of these things, they don't work anymore. So these things are on the outside to protect these things because we used a light gauge metal and we wanted to make it look cool. So what's going on? This box gets hot. These get hot right here and right here. And these pull in cool air from the bottom, make it come up, and they shoot out the top. And again, if I would have done that on the inside, these tubes would have got fried out in a couple of years. Instead, this thick steel over here is taking all the beating.
And this was also a really good idea to leave some space there. That works excellent, dries all the wood out. So when I go to light it the next time, just a little bit of lighter fluid gets it going. I'll always start the fire with this wood down here. And actually, the last thing is, what thickness of steel did you use for this?
This whole thing is made out of 1/4-inch thick plate. But remember, when you're making something like this, you're making a giant battery, something to retain heat. So that even if you want to make it out of 1/2-inch thick steel, that's fine too. Don't go to the light gauge stuff because it's not going to retain the heat as well, and you're not going to be able to push heat as well. Because all this thing is getting super, super, super hot, and then you're able to blow the heat off of this thing and retain the heat. The hotter you can make this thing with the thicker steel, the longer everything's going to last, and the better off you're going to be.
So here's a final look at it. That's a little grate that goes in it.
One thing too. So the enemy of metal, whenever you're doing something with metal, you never want it resting on the concrete floor because concrete is porous, moisture goes through it. So these tubes have little tiny 1-inch feet at the bottom of them, so these tubes are never resting flat on the floor. If you spend this much time doing something, okay, you don't want your flat metal resting on the floor, otherwise the bottoms of these things are going to rust out. So we have these things on little feet, and that's just so air could get underneath this stuff and moisture doesn't build on to the bottom of this thing, getting drying these things out and rusting them out. So it's going to last a really long time.